The BRICS group of big emerging economies has announced the admission of 6 new members in an attempt to reshape the global world order and provide a counterweight to the US and its allies. From the beginning of next year, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Argentina, the UAE and Ethiopia will join the current 5 members. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It was announced at a summit in Johannesburg. China's President Xi Jinping described the expansion as historic. He had been the leading proponent of the admission of new members, presenting an enlarged Brics as a way for the global South to have a stronger voice in world affairs. It is unclear, however, how the expansion would significantly enhance the group's clout on the global stage. That would depend on how far it will be able to act in unison, analysts said, and the group of new members has made it even more disparate, a mix of powerful autocracies with middle-income and developing democracies. It's not entirely clear what the newest BRICS members will have to gain from their membership in the bloc. Margaret Myers, the director of the Asia and Latin America program at the Inter-American Dialogue. For the moment, at least, this move is more symbolic than anything. It's an indication of wide-ranging global South support for a recalibration of the global order. Vladimir Putin did not attend the 3-day summit in person, as he faces an arrest warrant for war crimes in Ukraine issued by the International Criminal Court, but the BRICS enlargement represents a symbolic boost for him, as he fights a US-led effort to isolate his regime to force a withdrawal and an end to the war. The decision to admit Iran, also looking for a way to sidestep sanctions, represented a win for Putin and Xi, helping give the group a more anti-Western, non-democratic tinge. They prevailed over the more cautious approach of the other members, who preferred to portray the group as non-aligned. Putin defends invasion of Ukraine in BRICS summit address. For Argentina, facing dire economic problems, membership represents a potential lifeline to escape from the deepening crisis. Its president, Alberto Fernandez, said it represented a new scenario for the country. We open up our possibilities of joining new markets, of consolidating existing markets, of raising investment coming in, of creating jobs and raising imports, Fernandez said. Ethiopia became the only low-income country in the group. Its Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, described it as a great moment for his country. Nearly 24 countries had formally applied to join the group, but there had to be consensus among its existing 5 members for candidate countries to be admitted. South Africa's President, Cyril Ramaphosa, said the members had agreed on the guiding principles, standards, criteria, and procedures of the BRICS expansion process. Those criteria were not explained, however. Indonesia, for example, with a population of 274 million and a powerful force in Asia, applied to join but was not admitted. For China and Russia, this is a win. They have been pushing for this for 5+ years now, said Ryan Berg, the head of the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. For China, it allows them to continue to build what they hope is a Beijing-centric order. For Russia, who is hosting it next year, it sees this as a tremendous opportunity in its current moment of significant isolation. If you're Brazil, or if you're India, you're less enthusiastic about expansion, even though they're rhetorically committed to it, because it dilutes the power of your membership in an organization that includes global power like China, Berg said. There is not likely to be an immediate economic benefit from membership for members, who already have extensive bilateral ties with China. The group's new development bank is still relatively small. But Myers said that although the move is largely symbolic, that does not mean it is unimportant. This is significant and shouldn't be dismissed by G7 and other global North actors, she argued. With these new members, especially the major oil-producing ones, on board, the BRICS configuration represents a much more significant share of the global economy and global population. If Saudi Arabia accepts the invitation, the world's largest crude oil exporter will find itself in the same economic bloc as the world's biggest oil importer, China. It will also mean that Russia and Saudi Arabia, both members of OPEC+, a group of major oil producers, will join each other in a new economic bloc. The two countries often coordinate their oil output, which has in the past put Saudi Arabia at odds with its ally, the United States. The bloc's expansion raises the question of potential de-dollarization, a process by which members would gradually switch to using currencies other than the US dollar to conduct trade. The BRICS countries have also been talking about a common currency, an idea analysts have described as unworkable and unlikely in the near future. Putin said the issue of a common currency was a difficult question, but added, "We will move towards solving these problems." The expansion takes place at a time when some BRICS members, namely Russia and China, are locked into rising tensions with the West. Experts have said that choosing to include countries that are openly antagonistic toward the West, such as Iran, could swing the group further toward becoming an anti-Western bloc. Built off a term originally coined by former Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill to describe key emerging markets, the group has persisted despite deep differences in political and economic systems among its members. Economically, not many of the countries that are applying to join are particularly large, O'Neill told Bloomberg earlier this week. Existing BRICS members have had enough difficulty trying to agree just between the 5 of them, he added. So beyond the admittedly hugely powerful symbolism, I'm not quite sure what having a lot more countries in there is going to achieve. BRICS held its first summit in 2009 with 4 members and then added South Africa the following year. It launched its new development bank in 2015. The United Arab Emirates President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan said on X, formerly Twitter, "We appreciate the inclusion of the UAE as a member to this important group." Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said his country looked forward to joining BRICS in order to strengthen economic cooperation among its members, as well as raise the voice of the global South, according to the presidential spokesperson. When selecting new members, the bloc may have taken into consideration the pricing of energy products and how their countries can reduce their liability and vulnerability in terms of the cost of oil, she said. Besides Russia, all of the core BRICS countries are non-energy producing countries. They need to be able to make their economies function, but they don't want to get caught in the secondary collateral damage of sanctions, she explained. The use of unilateral sanctions against countries and the continued dominance of the US dollar in global trade is something BRICS has vocally challenged. The expansion opens up new avenues for trade, said Karen Costa Vasquez, a non-resident senior fellow at the Center for China and Globalization in Beijing. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres attended Thursday's expansion announcement, reflecting the bloc's growing influence. He echoed BRICS' long-standing calls for reforms of the UN Security Council, International Monetary Fund, and World Bank. Today's global governance structures reflect yesterday's world, he said. For multilateral institutions to remain truly universal, they must reform to reflect today's power and economic realities. BRICS countries have economies that are vastly different in scale and governments, with often divergent foreign policy goals, a complicating factor for the bloc's consensus decision-making model. Though home to about 40% of the world's population and a quarter of global gross domestic product, internal divisions have long hobbled BRICS' ambitions of becoming a major player on the world stage. It has long been criticized for failing to live up to its grand ambitions. The regularly repeated desire of its member states to wean themselves off the dollar, for example, has never materialized, and its most concrete achievement, the new development bank, is now struggling in the face of sanctions against founding shareholder Russia. Even as BRICS leaders this week weighed expanding the group, a move every one of them publicly supported, divisions surfaced over how much and how quickly. Last-minute deliberations over entry criteria and which countries to invite to join extended late into Wednesday evening. Bloc heavyweight China has long called for an expansion of BRICS as it seeks to challenge Western dominance, a strategy shared by Russia. Other BRICS members support fostering the creation of a multipolar global order, but Brazil and India have both also been forging closer ties with the West. Brazil's Lula has rejected the idea that the bloc should seek to rival the United States and Group of 7 wealthy economies. However, as he departed South Africa on Thursday, he said he saw no contradiction in bringing in Iran, a historical arch-foe of Washington, if it advanced the cause of the developing world. We can't deny the geopolitical importance of Iran and other countries that will join BRICS. What matters is not the person who governs, but the importance of the country. Let us hear your thoughts in the comments section. Please kindly give us a like and subscribe and hit that notification button.